Hi guys, today we're going to talk about the Die Hard series. I'm going to take 3 Die Hard movies. There are 5, but I'm not going to talk about the other 2 because they don't feel like Die Hard. They feel more like Jason Bourne. So we're going to talk about Die Hard by Bruce Willis, starting with first Die Hard. So first Die Hard starts with John McClane as the NYPD detective. So he's going through some family crisis. So he lives in New York, but then again, his wife and family lives in Los Angeles. So it's that time of the year when our family in the United States visits each other during Christmas Eve. He wants to kind of save his marriage and wants to visit his wife. His wife is currently working with the Nakatomi Corporation. So Nakatomi Corporation is a very big company, and Holly is the name of the wife of John McClane, played by Bruce Willis. John McClane is an NYPD. He comes to Los Angeles to meet his wife, and his wife has grown, very well in her career. So she sends a limo to pick him up. So the movie starts off with John McClane reaching Nakatomi building. He's riding a limousine for the first time. So, he meets his wife. They try to kind of work things out, but then again, they start fighting. As they're fighting, the employees of Nakatomi is celebrating a very big deal that has been closed, and then it's Christmas Eve. So the entire building, there's nobody. It's just the company of Nakatomi is there. As they are celebrating, John McClane tries to clean him up a little bit, wash himself up, and suddenly we hear gunshots. Okay, in the gunshots, we have some terrorist attack that happens. Now, this movie has its own twist and turn. That's why I really love this Die Hard series, because of the twist and turn. Initially, as a first-time watcher, I thought it was a terrorist takeover movie. But as the movie progresses, it's going to be turning into something completely different. The villain in the movie is played by Alan Rickman. His character is called Hans Gruber. He claims himself as a German freedom fighter, but then we'll go more deeper into as the story progresses. So John hears this gunfight. So he starts observing the commotion, right? So he starts noting down names, who is the leader, who are the henchmen. Alan Rickman, Hans Gruber, right? So he's this very suave guy, speaks very well. At first glance, you will not think that he is a terrorist. So now the movie turns into a hostage situation, and John is trying to figure out, are they looking for any motive? How can he save the people? And in the movie, as it progresses, what happens is Hans Gruber is laying out a very foolproof plan. In the plan, he initially wanted to hack the vault of the Nakatomi Corporation. Initially, I thought this was just a heist movie. He's trying to take away money. So as the movie progresses, henchman starts looking out for people who are, basically not in the party. Are there any people that are hiding somewhere? So he starts looking around. And also as part of the plan, they start planting bombs in the building. So John McClane gets into a firefight. He kills one of them, and he's trying to get in touch with the outside world, right? So he's trying to say that there's a terrorist attack that's going on, and the police over there, just takes it as just a prank call. Nobody takes it seriously. The cops, just to make sure there's just not another prank call, sends one of the cops to the building just to check out the scene over there. The cop realizes that, he's just checking around and sees that there are no firefights happening. It's just a wild goose chase. And suddenly John McClane drops one of the terrorists that he just killed from the building on top of the car of the cop. And then there's a firefight that ensues. All right. The cop is calling, hey, I need backup. Right. So that's where the movie goes into full swing, the changes of gear, right? Now it's like an action pack. People are trying to figure out how can they save themselves. And Alan Rickman, Hans Gruber, he wants this done very swiftly, quietly. He was not expecting, a disturbance in his plan, right? So as he figures out, and then people are kind of wondering, his henchmen are wondering that, what if we don't go to plan? So he has already thought this through. Outside the contingency plan, he already has another plan, right? So in the plan, what happens is he says it's all part of the plan. No need to worry. You guys just focus on what you guys are doing. So the cop starts coming in, the hostage rescue teams are there, and, they're trying to kind of raid the building. So he's trying to communicate saying that, don't do this. We don't know how many people are there. You're just sending your cops into an unknown territory, right? Over there's this cop called Al. Now he gets through him on the walkie-talkie, and he doesn't disclose himself, as a cop, because, the walkie-talkie that he's using is being taken from one of the dead terrorists, right? So he doesn't disclose too much information, and he starts communicating. Now this turns into like more of a buddy cop movie, because 80s, early 90s, there were a lot of buddy cop movies, right? You have Cash and Tango, you have Lethal Weapons. So I figured that in the first time watching, this could be another buddy cop movie. But then again, the tone of this movie is just your ordinary guy trying to do extraordinary actions in life, right? So he's just the wrong guy, wrong place at the wrong time, right? So as the cop starts thinking, how to rescue these hostages and negotiate with the terrorists, Hans Gruber starts looking out, saying that let's capture this one person who is, derailing their plans. So there's a lot of firefight that ensues. And the best part of the movie I still remember is that, as I said earlier, right, John McClane is trying to freshen up. As the gunfight happens, he starts running, right? So he didn't have the chance to wear shoes. He didn't have a chance to wear a clothes. So he's just wearing this white plain vest. Right, so in one of the firefight, what happens is now he's bruised and there's a lot of blood over there. He goes into one of the exhaust ducts, right? So he's escaping there, and I'm sure you guys have seen in the meme saying he's just lighting a lighter in one of the small ducts, right? So once he comes out of the duct, you'll see that his vest is all now black or close to being black, right? So it's full mess. So what happens after that? The cops try to rescue, but these guys were not very well planned, and they're more like professional soldiers, right? They come with full weapons and anti-tank missiles. So whatever the cops are trying to throw at them, they kind of wins and ends up destroying them. So John is trying to say, just don't try to come into the building. Now is not the right time to rescue. And in between, he has the detonator of Hans Gruber, right? He wanted to blow the building in the first place. So Hans Gruber is now searching for the detonator, saying that you guys follow the other plans. That's where he encounters John McClane for the first time. So these guys are interacting, and John senses something is wrong. And he asks Hans Gruber, saying that, what is your name? Are you part of the list? Hans Gruber gives him a name, and John McClane realizes that he's not part of the list. So he gives him a gun just to test, right? But there's no bullet in the gun. So Hans tried to shoot him. And the moment he pulls the trigger, there's no fire, right? So John McClane says, he's not stupid enough. He won't give you a loaded gun. So that's where Hans Gruber and John McClane meets for the first time. They have been playing cat and mouse wild chase, right? In the entire building. Good thing I like about Die Hard is that, the movie starts off in a single building and all the actions are happening inside the building, right? Yes, obviously there are cops outside, but the tension that builds up, it's very claustrophobic. You're trying to root for this guy, John McClane, right? And now the news reaches to the main public. So that's where Holly gets picked up, right? Because they're interviewing John McClane's daughter. Now they realize who this cop is. And that's where, Hans Gruber, as a final plan, takes Holly as a hostage. So John McClane surrenders in the movie, but not before killing Hans Gruber and his final henchman with 2 single bullets that he has exhausted all the bullets and he's left with 2 shots, and he uses them, kill the final 2 bosses, right? And also in the movie, what I like is the FBI, they are following a textbook, how to negotiate with terrorists. They try to kind of pretend that they're rescuing, but it was more like an attack. Right? And that's where I really like, they give a homage to the Vietnam War, and then this music by, I think, Creedence Clearwater, I think they was playing, and I thought, I think this guy must be ex-US soldier that was participating in the Vietnam War. And I think there's a hint given in that movie as well. Finally, John McClane ends up rescuing everyone just by himself. And he is kind of declared like a hero, right? Everybody, initially all the cops didn't take him seriously. They thought he was just another random guy. But in the end, they realized that there's this one guy who rescued the entire hostages, and he reunites with his wife, right? So why you should watch Die Hard? It's just one of those movies that it's very hard to make a sequel, and some people believe that this should be left alone as it is. And Die Hard, anyone, even me, my parents, we always collect the old trilogy, be it in VHS or CD or DVD, right? And I think this movie came out in 1988, and I think I must be 1 year at that time, all right? But I saw this movie in my 90s. So as Die Hard franchise kicked off from there, everybody was talking how good the movie is. You would expect a sequel to come in, right? So what happened was, after I think about 2 to 3 years, they didn't make another Die Hard movie. So it came out in 1988. In 1990, they brought in a new director. The first movie was directed by John McTiernan. And McTiernan, you must have seen Predator, right? So I have good faith in this director, right? So when you see the movie, you'll feel that his movies are very grounded, right? There's not too much exaggeration. Exaggerations are happening, but it's happening at a level, it feels very natural. Right? So they wanted to make a sequel. I think the studio must be thinking, right, it was a great success, let's try to replicate it, right? They took the theme of Christmas, right? So again, now what's happening is they made a sequel in Christmas, but this time what happens, the movie kind of gives up saying that John McClane has kind of made up with his wife. They're now happy. He has kind of got a transfer from New York to LA just to be close with his family. Now he's been promoted also because he's a hero, right? But unlike other promotions, like you'll see like someone being nobody to going a general, right? Those are very unrealistic movies, right? But he's now got a transfer. He's now a lieutenant, right? So he's in Washington. He's in this airport called Dallas Airport. So he's waiting for his wife to join him for Christmas. So he's waiting in the airport, just going about his the normal what anybody would do, right? Just waiting for his wife. And then this was like early 90s, so you could smoke at the airport, drink. Nobody. I don't think airports were very strict back then. Good old days, right? We get a shot of Holly kind of coming in the airplane, and they're having very calm. And that's where we get introduced to the first antagonist. The first antagonist, see like a foreshadowing in the TV screen saying that there's this general in South America called General Esperanza, and you'll see another colonel just beside General Esperanza called Colonel Stewart. In the movie, what happened was, I think this general was caught for drug smuggling, and they realized he's a drug warlord. So the United States government wanted to extradite him to the States so that he's given good justice, right? So that was the foreshadowing, what we kind of anticipate what will happen in the movie. And then you'll see that there's a group of mercenaries, like they don't come across as thugs. They are very well dressed. You can see, and always in Die Hard movies, we should pay close attention to the attires that these guys are wearing, right? Look at the boots, look at the haircuts. You'll see that these guys are soldiers and militaries, right? So General Stewart sets up in the sequel another makeshift airport, right? A control tower, because the premise of the movie is to hijack the airport, the Dallas airport, because General Esperanza's plane is coming, and they want this plane to land safely on the Dallas airport. For that to happen, they come up with a plan saying that let's create a control tower, right? With the sophisticated, I think these are all military grade technology, right? So that's why they could kind of interfere or hack into the civilian system. So the civilian control tower got hacked. General Stewart kind of wants them, saying, a military cargo plane is landing and no other civilian plane should be landing. But everybody thought, he's bluffing, they should call the military, the FBI, so that, and then they didn't want the news to go out. But as a warning, saying that, these guys are serious, they made one of the planes land, and then the plane crashed. And now with the plane crashing, General Stewart says now he has the attention of the folks, right? So the people at the airport didn't want this news to go out, because it's an airport, there are a lot of planes, and if it were to happen to any city, everybody would be panicking, right? So that's where, the premise was. And then John McClane, again, being at the wrong place at the wrong time, unfortunately, his wife's plane is also kind of supposed to land at Dallas, right? So the Dallas airport says, do not try to land. They'll give you further instruction. And people are just wondering, these planes were supposed to land 1 hour ago, maybe half an hour ago, but all these planes have been circulating the airspace for more than 5-6 hours. And then people are panicking. So as the situation escalates, now they are thinking they should call the federal department and escalate this to Washington and the senior folks, right? You see another group of commandos landing. Now, you would see as a viewer saying that, okay, now the government is taking control, more specialized people are landing, and then they're going to take control of the situation. So these are military guys. They're saying, we want to capture these guys as much as the Dallas police, right? Or the airport police. So what happened was there was a firefight that ensued they figured out where these terrorists were kind of located. And John also surprisingly, he didn't want to wait for approval from others, so he went on his own, right? So both of them kind of simultaneously reached the same spot at the same time. So there was a firefight that ensued, and then John saw, I think, one of the terrorists running away, right? As the soldiers were kind of trying to mop up the place, saying, the terrorist has been defeated, they have ran away, and this whole place is about to explode because they have rigged the entire space. And John didn't want to wait, so he followed one of the guys, he took the gun, and what happened was one of the terrorists saw him, and then as basically chasing the terrorists in the snowmobile, right? So one snowmobile coming towards John, he's driving towards the terrorists. Both of them shoot one another, right? But then again, at a very close point blank range, none of the bullets were hitting the terrorists. Okay, so that's where John realized, how did I miss? And then he pulls out the magazine and says, "It's all blanks." Right? So he goes to the airport, he tries to warn the captain over there, saying, this is where they have been double crossed, they're part of the same team. Nobody believes, and he just shoots the captain, right? And he realized that, see, even if I shoot you, nothing happened because these are blank. Now everybody says, now this is personal. Now they realize this is double crossed. Colonel Stewart, once he figured that the general is landing, they requested a fully fueled plane to take them off to safety. All right. So everybody's happy, like they feel that they're gonna be succeeding. And as the General Esperanza's planes land, he comes out of the window and says, "No, now I have freedom." But again, John out of nowhere knocks him, saying that not yet. Right? And then General Esperanza, as he was trying to arrest, the Colonel Stewart's team arrived and they shoot at John McClane, right? And he locks him up in the cockpit. And then General Stewart said, "This guy is always everywhere," right? And then he tells the general, "No need to worry." And he asks this guys, like, "How many grenades you got each," right? And then everybody says, like, 3 each. Then let's use them. They throw the grenades at the cockpit. One of my favorite reviewers called Jeremy Jan, I don't know, you guys should look it up. And he pointed out, I saw this, and I'll come back to Die Hard 1 also, right, where they made some mistake, though the good movies are. Grenade fuse, typically once you remove the pin, right, ideally should be about like 5 seconds at the max to explode. But then again, this movie basically is a movie, right? So the fuse was like a bit long, I think about like entire 30 seconds, it must be it. And then, the bomb explodes and John McClane, I don't know what kind of luck or what kind of God is on his shoulder, I don't know. So he escapes again using the ejector seat, right? And that's where Colonel Stewart says that you one lucky MF, right? But then again, this is John McClane is no longer to be worried. They have the plane fuel and ready. Holly's plane, everybody's plane that's circling now, they get an alert saying that they are low on fuel. They have to land by any means necessary. So the enemy's plane is about to fly off, and again John kind of figures out which path they're taking. And they go into what we call as a boss fight, right? But if it was a game, I would be fighting, it feels like a game. You fight the middle boss and the last boss, right? So over here, they could have killed John, but then again, they didn't choose to kill him right away. Again, bad choice, right? So what they did was, one by one, first the major over there tries to fight John McClane. He ends up getting killed. And then now Colonel Stewart says, I'm going to fight this guy. And John, he knows that he can't, you have to make it a bit realistic. You can't keep on fighting everyone, right? So he gets kicked off from the plane, but as he falls off, he realizes that there's a fuselage and he can just pull the lever of the plane's fuel, right? And that fuel acts as a trail, right? And then they flies off, they think that everything is done, they are off to freedom. That's where John says his famous Die Hard line, "Yippee-ki-yay, MF," right? So that's he lights it up, the plane catches fire, explodes, and that acts as the final landing light for all the other planes, saying, they can see the landing light, and one by one, the plane starts landing. And that's how John saves. Again, a lot of people gets reunited with his wife. They make out in the end. But if I were to personally say, they did not really live up to the first one, because the first one was very nuanced, very sophisticated. Alan Rickman's role, I don't think anybody can play that role as good as him. Very calm, composed, terrorist leader, right? Or a heist leader, because I realized that in Die Hard 1, they were not just terrorist group. They were looking to steal the company bonds so that the transaction becomes untraceable. Very smart move. But on Die Hard 2, what I've just realized is that they wanted to kind of leverage the Christmas action movie sequence, and they brought in a different director also. I would say it's a good time, one time maybe if you want to watch it, but I watch it multiple times because these are really good movie. There's a continuity to that. So Die Hard 1, one of the best movies. Die Hard 2, I would say, live up to 50% of the first one. Comes Die Hard 3. It's called Die Hard with a Vengeance, right? So now the title gives you a lot of signs, what's coming up, what's coming in the third sequel, right? So the movie starts off with John McClane being called back. You will see John McClane, having a bad hangover. And this is where I realized that the marriage that he was trying to save is over, right? He's going in the path of divorce, right? And since he is no longer that, ideal cop because he's drinking, he's, not doing his duty well, he got suspended. But for some reason in the movie, there's a terrorist attack that happens in New York. I always say that if you want to see what the next plan of terrorists are, always watch Hollywood movies, right? You will know that what's the plan these terrorists are going to make. So there is a subway explosion that happens in New York, and there's a mysterious call that happens to the cops saying that his name is Simon. And that's where as a kid also we got to introduce with a game called Simon Says. So in the movie it says, Simon says do this and do that, and no other terrorist attack is going to happen. But for that to happen, he needs John McClane on the team. And he sends John McClane to Harlem Street in New York. Harlem Street at that time was very notorious. You get all this wrong characters over there. And I'm not going to say this on the screen, but you will see what did Simon did to John McClane to go to Harlem. He's going to wear a big signboard, okay? And this signboard, no sane person will do it, but he goes there, right? And Samuel L. Jackson sees it from a distance, saying, okay, this guy is going to get himself killed in Harlem, right? So he goes there, and then John McClane explains to Samuel L. Jackson, saying that, mind your own business. This is a police job that I'm doing. Then he says, if you're a police or not, you're going to get killed. And if a cop dies in Harlem, next day there's going to be like 1,000 other cops with itchy trigger finger. Right? So, you get the race story, right? You guys can do your own research on that. But for some reason, as John was being attacked by the folks at Harlem, Samuel L. Jackson saves him. Now, he is also an unwanted hero now. What happened is, Simon calls up again saying that, I feel that you guys did my task, but out of nowhere, one hero came into the picture. Now, since he wants to do so much hero work, every task that he gives out is going to be John McClane plus Samuel L. Jackson together. They have to do this task, what Simon says, all together, right? And this is where things get very interesting, right? In Die Hard Vengeance, the moment all these things are happening, you're in your head saying that, okay, this is a terrorist attack, what's going on in this movie? And you see a lot of dump trucks coming in, right? And then these guys have planned it so well, saying that, oh, if this event is happening over there, we should be over here trying to do something, right? So they tell cops over there saying that these dump trucks are sent by the mayor, there's a flood that's happening. So everybody believes that. And then suddenly what happened is Simon says that Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis has to go to another subway and they have to find a phone booth. And in that phone booth, phone will ring and they have to answer. So Simon doesn't give them second chances. The moment he gives a task, you have to listen, or a riddle, you have to listen, right? So they solve a lot of these riddles, there's a good banter that goes between the both of them, right? It was their second task, I think, yeah. That's where they were looking for this phone inside a train. And for some reason, once they found the bomb, they were already too late. So Samuel Jackson is another place thinking that this is the phone call that's going to happen. And the moment he picks up the phone, he says where is your other partner? He says he's busy doing cop things. And he says, this is not part of the game. That means a penalty. The moment it is a penalty, John McClane sees that there's a bomb and two liquids are fusing, and then the bomb explodes, right? So that's the, I think, second terrorist attack that happened in the movie. Now the cops have also figured out, saying that these guys are very sophisticated group of terrorist organization that's using high advanced explosives, right? In the movie, you'll see a simple single dot of that chemical can, create a massive explosion. So now they know that what these cops are going up against. And then I think a phone rings and they were discussing, and I think the FBI also came at that time, right? So the FBI is saying that, do you remember a guy called Hans Gruber, right? So then John realized, oh, that slow dying scene from the first, right? And he says that then, if that rings a bell, then there is this guy called Hans Simon Gruber. So when he says Simon says, basically he was always telling the truth. Nobody paid attention, right? So Simon Hans Gruber, again, is an ex-military guy. So it all started making sense, right? These guys are pulling off things in New York City that very advanced people will think, right? And then just like a continuation, or maybe, paying homage to the first movie, as you started off a terrorist attack, then you realize that both of the movies are basically nothing but a heist movie. It's about stealing money and gold. So over there, people keep talking about Fort Knox. And I also started researching what is Fort Knox all about, right? So they say that this is where all the gold reserves are. But then again, in the movie, this was a hint to the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve in New York is where they keep all the gold reserve of America. In the movie, they say about $150 billion. Okay, that's where all the dump trucks were for. So as the movie progresses, they solve a large number of riddles. My favorite riddles of all time in a movie is from the Die Hard 3 Vengeance. And you guys can do it all the time. And where it says that, you have to take 5-gallon water bottle and a 3-gallon water bottle and use this to put exactly 4 gallons of water, right? So this is something that I always bring it up when I'm drinking with my friends, right? Just to play around, right? As the movie progresses, then you realize that they are part of a heist. They were stealing the Federal Reserve, and John, for some reason, keeps showing up, right? Then they started figuring out how to catch this guy. So they start following the dump trucks, and they ends up landing on a boat, right? So they figure that this boat is where the terrorists are. Yeah, I think in the Die Hard series, though every movie has a lot of action, blood, gore, you could literally see someone getting split in half. Okay, so that was a very interesting thing. As a kid, I was watching, oh my god, what just happened? And then that's where, you know, Simon gets introduced to Samuel Jackson. Again, just like an homage to the first movie, John McClane gives a gun to Samuel Jackson. The assumption is like he's a black character, so he'll know how to use gun, and Samuel says, I know how to use a gun, right? But then again, when he's trying to shoot Simon, the gun clicks and Simon says, you should turn off the safety first before shooting, right? So they get captured again. In the end, they realize that they're now in a boat where that explosive liquid, it's like 1 ton or 2 ton of explosive, enough to wipe off half the island, right? So they get tied over there. And in the meantime, the goals are being transported. Simon gives final riddle saying that, you know, there is this massive amount of bomb that's placed in one of the schools in New York. Again, bringing to the second movie, they didn't want to do a panic. The second part was like plain. Now this is like with innocent kids, right? They didn't want to alert the parents. They didn't want to create a commotion. So finally they found the school, and then in the school they'll see that the liquids are mixing. And as they figure, you know, that we are not able to solve it, the liquids explodes, and then the guy who was diffusing it, he realized that again it was like a false alarm because it was all maple syrup or something. I forgot what actually the word was, but it was not the actual chemical. The actual chemical was in the boat. And John McClane and Samuel Jackson tied up. They took a bit of a chemical and they, you know, use it on their handcuff, and they explode, and then the whole ship also explodes. This is where it gets a bit movie-ish, right? I don't know the exact word, but yeah, a bit filmy, we call it in India, right? It's a big explosion, but he survives for some reason. Just like in Die Hard 2, he survives and he exits to the ejector seat, right? That's what all the other critics are also saying, that they were thinking how to end this movie, because even I felt that the ending of the movie was not done justice, because the cops finally arrive where these guys are located. These guys are celebrating, you know, the villain says, you know, tomorrow we decide which country to buy, right? So because they have all the money. And then the cops kind of diverge on the hideout of the terrorists. And for some reason, it was a very easy kill, right? This guy gets on a helicopter. He's trying to kill John McClane. John McClane takes out a revolver, not even his classic Beretta, right? So he shoots the electric pole and it gets tangled in the propeller and the helicopter crashes. That's how the movie ends, right? I know I may not be doing too much justice to the third sequence, because if I were to rank the Die Hard series, number 1 is Die Hard. Number 2 would be with Vengeance, because these two movies tie in together very well, because it's a vengeance about the death of the brother from the first one, right? Die Hard 2 was a good time watch. So if I were to be collecting, I would collect these 3 movies. Then came Die Hard 4 and Die Hard 5. And I did not personally resonate with it because it did not become a Die Hard movie. It became more like a, you know, one of those, the Mission Impossible or something about espionage, right? There are hackers involved, there are Russian governments. So this 2 movie, I think 4 was a good time watch, 5 was a complete garbage. So I would say that don't watch this 2, just watch the 3, savor it. And you should do a marathon with these 3 movies with your family or with your friends over a good drink and enjoy yourself a good Die Hard movie. All right, so you want to watch an underdog movie, someone's triumphing over all the odds of life, Die Hard, all right? This is not your slap on the chick, what do you call, comedy movie. No, it's not a buddy comedy movie. It's a movie with a lot of nuances. Okay, you have to be very observant of the people, especially Bruce Willis, John McClane's character. Pay attention to his clothes, okay? From a crispy looking clothes to how it becomes like, you know, your dishwasher clothes, okay? This is one thing you're gonna be looking at while watching this movie. You wanna start watching Die Hard, start with the 1988 first, not just because you have an OTT platform, you wanna watch A Good Day to Die Hard. No, Die Hard 1, then Die Hard 2, then Die Hard 3 with Vengeance. This is the actual trilogy, okay? And what you should be watching it is on a big screen, not on a mobile phone. You should be paying attention to all the explosion, the glass shattering. And if you have some friends over drinks and a big screen, this movie, you will have an absolute blast.